Uh, Hi. Okay. Okay. Hello, friends! How is everybody doing today? Today we're going to be talking about tutorials, and why your tutorial sucks, and how to make it better, because these are very important things that a lot of people have not really considered. By which I mean they haven't considered at all. The question is... Excellent. If you see me looking at this is where I have chat, so if I'm looking, staring at this wall here, that means I'm reading you guys. That means you should be, like, there and stuff. Hi! So, let's start out with a couple obvious questions. And this is a roundtable discussion, so feel free to chip in, feel free to say words at any time and all the time. But the first question is, like, what's a tutorial? Okay, I don't want to actually start that basic, but maybe I have to. It's probably not a terrible idea to start that basic. Because a lot of people misunderstand the purpose of a tutorial. There we go, that's better. So, why do you have a tutorial? Is the first question to ask. Why do you have one? And people will say, well, it's to teach people how to play your game, but is it really? People know how to play your game. By and large, people will figure it out. The question of why you have a tutorial is actually a little bit more in-depth than that, and I think it deserves a little bit more consideration than that. I'm the only YouTube streamer you subscribe to? Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So, your tutorial doesn't just teach your player how to play the game. It teaches the player how to interact with the world, and it teaches the player what's expected of them while they're in the world. Which is not an easy to ask. Like, that's a surprisingly difficult thing to do, right? Do I need to adjust this? Hold on, one brief tick. What? No. You need to push this button here. That's better. Does that actually work? Or did I just break everything? Nope, nothing broke. Okay, a few things broke, but it's fine. Yeah, this is the first time I've been 3D for a while. I use 3D specifically for chatting streams where I don't need the visuals of what you have on... yeah, well, I don't need to pull something up, where it's just going to be me, and chat. I guess it gives them context. Great tutorial is... Okay, so I'm going to talk about specific tutorials later. I want to talk about the general concept first. And because there are many specific tutorials that I want to bring up. Many unique and interesting tutorials that are worth talking about. But first, like, the general idea. When a player plays your game, they are walking into the game with a bunch of preconceptions. They are walking into the game very likely not as a new gamer. Unless you are one of very exceedingly few individuals, you are not making a tutorial for somebody who has never played video games. Unless you're like playing Lego Star Wars or Jackbox or Wii Sport sort of stuff. Unless you're specifically targeting the audience of people who are new to video games, who have not played video games, then you have to assume that your target audience has a base knowledge. Yeah, Kirby has to assume that the player has no knowledge, and that's fine, that's Yoshi's Woolly World sort of things. But in general, your target audience is probably not that. If you're a gamer, if you're working in game dev, if you're working on a project currently, there's a very good chance that your target audience has played a game. You don't make a tutorial for first-person shooters and not assume that people have never... You don't assume that people have never played a first-person shooter, right? You assume right out of the gate that they know that the mouse button is to look around, WASD is to walk, and you might have a little pop-up on the screen to verify that they know they have that knowledge, just to confirm it. But there's an assumption of understanding there, right? you can assume that the player knows a certain amount. Now, what a tutorial needs to do is establish what your game does differently. What your game does outside of the status quo. Because the status quo establishment... Mithy, you've seen me in 3D before. I know you've seen me in 3D. You've actually talked in chat while I was 3D. You can't hide that. So if you're playing a first-person shooter, the player is a fairly safe bet, unless you're doing like a console, which maybe, I don't know, it's going to be a little bit different then, but you can assume that the player has a base understanding of how to play a game. You can understand that the player knows at least something about how games work. So, what do you need to tell people? What do you need to tell people in your tutorial? Well, specifically, what your game does differently that they need to pay attention to, because that's what's important. What's important is what you do different, what you do unique, what is special to your game is first and foremost. And the established conventions, they press spacebar to jump, press control to crouch. You need to touch on those, but you don't need to dwell on those, right? You don't need to yell out at the top of your lungs, hey, use the right mouse, use the mouse to look around, because you can establish that the player has that baseline understanding, or at least is very likely to. So basically what I'm saying is, make your tutorial specific to your target audience. And then once it's done, once you've finished that tutorial, and not before, once you finish that tutorial, then you can work on a tutorial that adds a couple more general elements, that makes sure the bases are covered, that is a bit more friendly to other players. But that is, I don't want to say it's an afterthought because it is valuable, it is important, but it's really not as important. Does that make sense? Like, there's an understanding of what you know. There's an understanding of what the player knows. So. I do want to bring up a couple of specific tutorial examples. I won't be the first. Like, there's how many videos explaining how Mario 1-1 is a tutorial level, telling you how it shows you the threats before showing you to engage with them, by how it shows you that you have to move to the right to proceed. Mario 1-1 is the classic example of a tutorial level, and yet we don't do things like that anymore. I don't want to dwell on why 1-1 is a great tutorial level. It is. We know this. If you don't know this, type in Mario 1-1 into YouTube. I'm fairly certain that the first 10 results will be all entries about it being a tutorial level. Like, that's just how GameDev YouTube goes. But what I want to talk about is why we don't do that anymore. Why don't we do that anymore? Why don't we put the player in a situation and expect them to learn, trust them to learn? Do we not trust the player? Do we not trust the player anymore? Is that actually what's going on? Because it feels that way. It feels like we don't trust the player to make their own decisions. Mario 1-1 is a tutorial level, and everyone has clamored from high mountains and screamed the praises of how that teaches the player how to play Mario, and then turned around and written a tutorial that says press A to jump, and then turned around and written a tutorial that says, like the thumbnail says, press A to confirm that you can read this tutorial. Like, we can trust players, is what I'm getting at. What we're getting at is that we can trust the player to do things. Like, if the player is playing your game, you can trust that they want to play your game. I think that's I don't even think that's controversial. Is that a controversial argument? Like, is that a hot take? Am I making game dev hot takes here? Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, Twilight Princess is an example of one that doesn't trust the player. It holds your hand, it walks you through every single inch of how to play the game. But look at Zelda 3. Look at the Super Nintendo Zelda: A Link to the Past. The tutorial is putting you in an area where you can walk around where you can't get hurt. But instead of making it here's a tutorial, they put it in the world. Walking around at the beginning of A Link to the Past is just walking around the game world, is walking around and learning, talking to guards, is seeing the rain, is being in an area where you can't be hurt, but you can walk around and explore and learn how the controls work. And then as you progress, you learn, hey, there are secrets. And you have to learn how do you do the secrets to to proceed, because you have to lift up a certain bush to get in there. It's telegraphed like wild. No one can miss that bush. Maybe someone misses the bush, but no one how to get it. But some experimentation will get you there. And then you get the sword, and then the game slowly teaches you to use the sword by starting you with some very easy enemies that don't even attack you. The first guards in Link to the Past don't even attack you. They wander around randomly. You can walk into them and get hurt, but they will not actually pursue you. That's actually something that a lot of people don't realize. Those guards' AI is a drunk in a lamppost. It's just move in a direction, turn direction, move in a direction. Or stop for a few minutes. Yeah, but still. So that's trusting the player. That's trusting that the player wants to play your game. And if you don't take anything else away from the entire of this following 90-minute talk or whatever this ends up being, make it that. Make it that you can trust your player, and that you don't need to make the player feel infantilized. You don't need to make the player feel like they're being talked down to. Unless it's a bit. Okay, I'm going to just completely deny what I just established, and say that if it's a bit, then it's probably okay. That's going to be actually better. And there we go. If it's a bit, then you know what? That's actually more fair. And by a bit, look up the tutorial for Far Cry Blood Dragon. It's absurd. It's hilarious. It's stupid. It's a mockery of other tutorial systems. Blood Dragon starts out with the player rebooting their system and having to learn everything. And the tutorial is, press A to see you can read this. Press spacebar to confirm that you can jump. And then it gives you a long-winded explanation of saying jumping can increase your Z-axis. It goes full hog, and the actual player, the actual character that you're playing as, is yelling at the tutorial the entire time. Come on! Why do I have to go through this? It's making a mockery of it. But it's not that far off base. That's actually how we've been doing tutorials for the past decade. 2 decades, maybe. When did we start, when did we stop trusting players and stop expecting them to want to play our game? I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting question, and I think it's one that we really deserve to have a talk about. So, is it necessary? Well, no. Everybody who's played a game in the past decade has said, hey, why is this tutorial so oppressive? Why are they teaching me this super obvious stuff? Why aren't they just letting me play the game? That's a common refrain. That's a thing that people say. That's a thing that I've heard a good amount. And yet, it persists. And yet, that doesn't actually change the fact that people are writing these tutorials. Probably when game journalism failed to complete a simple jump in Cuphead. I'll get to Cuphead in a little while. I will. Don't worry, that's on the list. But in games journalism in general, we're not going to talk about game journalism in general, though. Aside from to touch on, yeah, that's a fair point. There are many journalists who are not gamers who are playing games for the first time and writing about them, and they are not the target audience. The journalists are not the target demographic of the development team, but they're the ones who are reviewing the game. So they kind of have to be, right? But but then again, look at Dark Souls. Dark Souls is a fantastic tutorial. I'm going to start going into specific examples now, and I'm going to start with Dark Souls because this is a YouTube video, and if I don't talk about Dark Souls in game design, then I'm just going to, you can't be on the platform. That's just how it works. You gotta. So, what is it in Dark Souls that is the tutorial? Well, you wake up, and you walk down a hallway with no enemies. You're completely safe, nothing even attacks you. You walk down a hallway with no enemies and no threats. You can see things are creepy, for whatever you want to define that as, and then you push forward, you find a giant monster, and you have to run away from it. Which is teaching the player not press A to attack, not teaching the player press right trigger to hold up a shield. It's not teaching the player how to play the game mechanically. It's teaching the player what makes the game unique and how to play the game mentally. It's teaching the player about the headspace they need to be in to play the game. Can't you ignore the tutorial and try to kill the first boss early? Yes, if you know what's going on. That's true if you know what's going on already. The first time a player plays that, it doesn't matter. But that can be done as a challenge. And you actually get a reward for it. Anyways. That is an option. But the second thing Dark Souls teaches you, after it has already assumed that you understand movement, after it has taught you to pick up a key and open a door, it teaches you to click on a button to pick up a key with just a context pop-up menu, a little context pop-up menu that says press X to pick up key. And then you walk over to the... Am I stuttering? How is the video quality for everybody? I just want to check because I don't know. I can't always tell directly. How is video? I would like to just check how video and audio quality are. But. And then the game gives you a shield. Now, yes, H-Bomber Guy did an entire rant on, he gives the shield first, and that's a problem. Or, it's teaching you to be I get that. I'm not denying that. H-Bomber Guy is a brilliant person. Whatever, that's coming through. That's separate. That's a different thing. I want to talk about the fact that they teach you the concepts of the game before they teach you the mechanics. They teach you the context of the game before they teach you the mechanics. And then they do it again. You have to run down a hallway with a enemy archer that's shooting you, and it teaches you how to defend yourself, and then teaches you how to attack, and teaches you the basics. But it's doing it in a level as opposed to in an abstraction. It is a level, and you can even go back there and go to the harder parts of that same section. It's not separated from the rest of the game. It's not separated into a completely different segment of the game. It is just the game, which is a good thing. That's a good thing, right? Like, the tutorial shouldn't feel like a tutorial. It should feel like the world. It should just feel like being in the game. And there are games that are tutorials. Think about it. Where's the tutorial in Portal? We were talking about this the other day when Jan was on the stream. Portal is a tutorial, right? Portal is a tutorial. The first 3/4 of the game is the tutorial. You go into the game, and it teaches you how to play the game. It teaches you how to walk a little bit. It teaches you slowly drip feeding you new mechanics and new stuff. You don't get the portal gun until like a quarter of the way through the game. Like, you have to go in. There's only 20 rooms or so, and you don't get the portal gun until you are in room like 5 or something. And you don't get the other portal gun until halfway through the game. Basically, book exposition versus info layering. Yeah, book exposition is a good way of describing it, and a good way of how it can fail too, right? Book exposition can be done comically poorly, and you can feel like the players are being talked at, the reader is being talked at. Movie exposition as well is a good example. You can weave it in organically, or you can feel like the character is talking directly at the camera. So there, we've already covered 2 games. So we've already covered Mario and Dark Souls. Now it's a YouTube video. It's officially a YouTube video. We've covered Mario and Dark Souls. So, what am I doing? What is game design? Okay. Kind of like a college computer class that I'm in has focused on the process before the language. Oh, okay. It's awesome when the game's mechanics meld well into everything else. Yeah, agreed. Is it coming to your channel? You have to say it's strange seeing me move around, especially seeing your teeth. Fair enough. Trying to just adjust this. There, whatever, that's fine. Yeah, a tutorial shouldn't feel like exposition. You shouldn't feel like you're being taught to play the game. You should feel like you're playing the game. Portal is a tutorial. Everything up to the ending of the standard rooms, everything up to the incinerator room, is all a glorified tutorial, teaching you mechanics, and the puzzles are the tutorials. Like, the game is a tutorial, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's teaching you new ways of playing the game and new interesting things as you're going through it. I need to adjust this. If this looks weird, I have actually no idea how this looks. But There. I had to weave this thing into a place. Alright, sorry if that scratched the mic. The other one I want to talk about is something that I brought up the other day. Because... Nice pose. The other one I talk about is one that I brought up the other day. Because it was a real shocking moment for me when I was playing Ghost 1.0. Looks you're sighting in invisible. No, it's my headset. I had to do some cable adjustment that I didn't do. I have a lavalier mic on it now. It's not the best, but it's a lot better than the built-in. I'm using a Vive, if anyone's curious. The built-in mic is acceptable, but for talking on like VR chat and stuff, but not acceptable for like recording. I don't know. It's not as good as I like to pretend it is sometimes. But yeah, so I have a lavalier now. Anyways, Ghost 1.0. Ghost 1.0 has a fascinating tutorial. It's actually not even the tutorial, it's the mechanics. Ghost 1.0 is a platformer. It is a platformer shooter where you run around and, well, you know, solve puzzles, shoot things, find your way, get keys, unlock doors, everything you do in a platformer. And I picked it up, and at the very beginning, I hated it. The controls, I mean. I hated the controls. And I'll tell you why. Because the controls felt weird to somebody who has been playing Metroidvanias since Metroid and Vania were games on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Like, keep in mind, I'm old. I'm 120 years old. I played games when games were established. And as somebody who's played Metroidvanias since Metroid and Vania, you don't put jump on the right trigger. R1 should not be jump. That's not how you do platformers. That's not how you do a 2D, side scroller. That's just not how it works. What are you thinking? Why do I have to do this? Why would you make such a bad decision? And then I kept playing and realized, wait, no. That's a good decision. I'm wrong. And I'll tell you why. The reason is that the game design requires it. Because your right thumb needs to be on the right analog stick, because you need to be Castlevania, obviously, yeah. The Vania in Metroidvania comes from Castlevania, the classical Castlevania games being the companions to Metroid, specifically Symphony of the Night. It wasn't really Metroidvanias until Symphony of the Night was... Symphony of the Night is one of the best games of all time, genuinely. Like, Super Metroid and Symphony of the Night are two of the best games of all times. So, your left analog stick is movement. You walk around, you move, you have a grand old time, it's a delight. The right analog stick is aim, so you can aim 360 degrees all around. And you can't walk and aim and jump if the jump button is on the button that you expect it to be. Because you want A to be jump, right? A is jump. You press A and you jump. Or B, depending on what kind of controller you have. But jump is always, it's always this button. I can't actually do a lot of gestures right now. I'm doing my best. But your jump button, you know what I'm talking about. It's the jump button you press to jump in every game. Well, it's not. And I was, angry at the beginning. I'm like, why is this not jump? Why can't I jump like this? Until I realized why. And it's like, oh, okay, I need to be able to jump while moving, while aiming. The game expects that of me. The game expects me to be able to be mobile, active in the platforming segments, while setting up attacks. And if my jump button is where the jump button should, I do this? Yeah, should be, then I can't. I just can't. It's just, there's no way of aiming while jumping without doing some weird finger gymnastics that, well... Next goal, leap motion? Sure. Yeah, I'm down to buy one of those. And the game had to teach me that. The game had to teach me to respect why it was doing that. And, well, because the game's mechanics were going to require me to use that knowledge, because the game's mechanics were going to require me to do that, I had to learn it. And it's fair for them to tutorialize that, establish that, and make me understand why that is a thing. And this touches on Cuphead. This touches on the Cuphead thing that was brought up earlier. Yeah, in the tutorial there is a relatively difficult jump. It's a jump that requires you to take every bit of advantage of every pixel of artwork on the screen. There's a pillar, and if you jump from the pillar, from the pillar to the next pillar, you will fail. You have to be all the way to the side of that pillar with, I believe, your character actually standing off the edge of it to jump and land on the next one. Because that's what the game is going to expect of you. Cuphead is not a easy game. It's a game that doesn't pull punches. It's a game that's quite difficult. And the game expects you to have that skill set, that understanding, and that ability. And if you don't, that's a problem. So the game throws it in the tutorial, and the game says, here, make this jump. It's easy. If you can't do it, you're going to have a problem. And I think that's fair. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think that's actually very reasonable. And people who failed at the tutorial because they couldn't handle that jump, well, they were going to have a lot more difficulty later on. And if someone had cleared that jump for them, well, guess what was going to happen the first time they got into a boss fight that required that level of precision? Guess what was going to happen the first time they got into one of the platforming levels that requires that level of precision? They're going to fail. Because the tutorial has to teach you how to play, what the specifics of your game and what makes it unique. And in that situation, what makes that game unique is the level of precision required. Would I say that Cuphead's tutorial is like a driver's test? I don't quite know what you mean by that, but I mean, it's a tutorial that requires you to have all the information you need to succeed. And if you don't have the information that you need to succeed, then, well, you need to go back to it and do the tutorial again. One of the more fun tutorials is Titanfall 2's tutorial. I have not played that, actually, so if you want to drop some information about it, I will gladly check it out. But, yeah, so. Step 1, make your tutorial not feel like a tutorial, and integrate it into the world, integrate it into the lore, and integrate it into the player's mind as just the first phase of the adventure, the first step of the game, the first thing that you do in the game. Where's my water? Do I have water somewhere? I should have water somewhere. I have no idea where my water is. Oh well. Rip my voice. It's fine. So. The best tutorials are invisible. I mean, a lot of people don't think of Link to the Past as having a tutorial, because the first part of the game flows so seamlessly that it just feels like it's the first part of the game, and that's good. That's a great thing. Tutorials should be mostly invisible. The player should not feel tutorialized too. They should just feel like they're playing the game. So if you feel like you're playing the game and you're getting the tools you need, then that's great. That's fantastic. And okay, fine. I'll hydrate. Hold on a sec. It's over here, I think. Okay, here it is. Water acquired. Sorry for that absolutely terrible noise that probably occurred. So, Mega Man X was brought up, and I think that Mega Man X is another great example of a tutorial that is just a level. The first level of Mega Man X teaches you what you need to know in a safe environment. And then, as you play the level, it teaches you, it drip feeds you bit by bit the tools you need to succeed. Well, okay, apparently this enemy needs to be, I have to jump and shoot. Okay, this enemy, I need to be careful because it's going to come at me quickly. This wall I can't jump up. Well, if I jump up and jump against the wall, my character grabs onto it. Well, what happens if I hit jump here? Well, you jump off the wall and you jump higher. You learn that organically without the game popping up a notice every 3 seconds to say, hey, do this, you need to do this to proceed. It doesn't need that because the player wants to play your game. The player wants to play your game, they want to be interested in the game, they want to learn how the game is played, and they're going to want to continue it. So you don't need to hammer the player over the head with a tutorial. you need to hammer them over the head with the things that make your game different from things they would expect, and that you can do subtly by just making it the game, by just making that part of the world. Again, like tutorial Portal. In Portal, it's just okay. This is just the world. I'm just doing these tests like a rat. That's fine. That's cool. I get it. Let's move on. Like you don't feel like Portal feels like a tutorial, but it also feels like it's just the game because it is just the game, but it's also tutorial. I probably talked enough about Portal right now. And you don't need to dump every mechanic on the player immediately. Mental load is a thing. There is a brain full status that you can get, and many games will hit that very quickly if you try to dump load and exposition and new concept and resource management and everything onto the player all at once. It's going to be too much for most people. Drip feed that information, make that information not exist until the players have gotten into the game itself. Make that not even be a thing until you as the designer are ready for the player to have that as a thing. You see what I'm saying? Do you see where I'm coming from? I will talk about Breath of the Wild in a few moments. Titanfall's tutorial has a part where you do a trial of an obstacle course. Okay, yeah, okay. This makes it feel like the player gets a feel for the game before the main game starts. That's actually a pretty good way of doing it. It's sort of taken out of the threat of the real world by making it a literal training segment. Gengetsu fight in Toho. Which one was that? I don't remember which fight is which in Toho. But yeah, I will talk about, I'll talk about Breath of the Wild now. Yes, sure. Now's the wait time for it. Let's go. Breath of the Wild is all about player expression and being open and being able to explore without having restrictions. Breath of the Wild is just an entire design from the ground up for... It's just an entire litany of trying to make a game where the player can do what they want. And trying to funnel the player completely into one specific path goes against that. Even at the very beginning of the game, you don't have to go and do the trials in any particular order. You don't even need to talk to the old man. You can just go out and wander around. But here's the thing. You will do the tutorial in Breath of the Wild organically, because you will see the neat things and you will want to do the things that are there. Like, just very naturally, by managing eye lines, by managing structures, by making structures appear in certain areas, they're going to funnel the player into doing what they need to do without shoving them there, without making it mandatory, without making it something that's restrictive and as overbearing. Because it doesn't need to be restrictive and overbearing, because again, the player wants to play your game, otherwise they wouldn't have it installed, downloaded, and running. Like, you don't need to entice the player to play your game. Let them play, and let the tutorial be a part of that play. Let that tutorial be a part of learning how to play the game. So, when in Breath of the Wild, when you leave, yes, the old man will give you directions, but you can walk out of there and take a left, and climb down a cliff, and just explore. But eventually, you will find the tutorial, and then you will. But when you get that tutorial, you're told what to look for, and well, you can ignore that for a while. But most players won't, because they see the shiny. In Breath of the Wild, the tutorial areas that it wants to funnel you towards are big, bright blue beacons on the map. And yeah, player sees shiny, player wants shiny. They will inherently walk towards that. Breath of the Wild made me look at open worlds differently. Yeah. I'm actually going to... Fallout is another one I'm going to talk about. Fallout is very much one I'm going to talk about. I'm going to finish my brain thinks on Breath of the Wild first. So, Breath of the Wild does restrict you, but you can't leave the opening island until you finish the tutorial. So, you can't actually leave the main island until you finish all the tutorial, but that's not really a problem, because the main island is... The tutorial island is actually big enough and populated enough to be interesting. You can play for hours on the tutorial island before you get the ability to traverse off of it and still have a good time and still not even feel like it's a tutorial area. And fun fact, when I played Breath of the Wild, I didn't go to Kakariko. Kakariko was the last village that I went to. I had explored the entirety... What? I had explored the entirety of the map before I made it to Kakariko. The entire world. So, I didn't get those tutorials. And it was fine because I learned to play the game organically. I didn't need them, and the game didn't shove them down my throat. It was only a problem because I didn't talk to the NPC that made me, that gives you the option of expanding your inventory until, like, I was already 3 Divine Beasts down, so I had no inventory restrictions there. That was a bit of a problem on my end, but that's fine. I worked around it. Yeah, I didn't have to go there, and I didn't. I just organically wandered around the world and learned to play the game because the game was set up in a way that allowed for me to do that. I do want to talk about Fallout in a moment, but I do also want to talk about what was I thinking about? I was just thinking about something. What was I just thinking about? Oh, beans. I forget. I lost it. I lost the brain think. Machine makes noise. Was there a machine? Okay, I wasn't sure if that was just on my ears. I actually stepped on my headphones for a moment, and I thought that was just that was just my headphone. Okay. Anyways. F-Zero-GX's story mode is good at teaching players the mechanics, but then again, there's massive difficulty spike on the second mission. What was I gonna say? I had something very... Oh well, onwards to Fallout. If it comes back to me, it comes back to me. If not, whatever. We can just keep it moving. I want to talk about the tutorial in Fallout, but not the tutorial in the new Fallouts. I want to talk about the tutorial in all of the Fallout series and where it went good and where it went bad. So, Fallout 1's tutorial. Does it have one? It kind of doesn't. It kind of feels like it doesn't. It feels like it doesn't have a tutorial because it just kicks you out and you're in the wasteland and you can just walk into a bad ambush and die instantly. But it's hidden. It's there, but it's hidden. It's there in a way that makes you that requires you to want to play the game. But again, we've established that the player wants to play your game, they like your game. That's fine. They want to like your game at the very least. Still bugged because I was missing... Anyways. In Fallout 1, there isn't really a combat tutorial outside of a rat that tries to bite you. There isn't a combat tutorial so much as there is a rat that attacks you and you're expected to have read the manual. That's a problem with older PC games where the game expects you to read the manual before playing. And yeah, there's not much of a tutorial there, but I want to talk about the narrative tutorial. I want to talk about the tutorial that's not mechanical. I want to talk about how they teach you to learn how to play in the world. Because when you leave the first starting area, you have one other point on your map. You're supposed to go here, and when you start going in that path, something happens. You come across a town on the way. You happen to walk into a town while you're on the way over there. Cool, neat. Go in, walk around, take a look at things, meet some people, recognize that you're not the only survivor in the wasteland, recognize that there is a world here, and it's impossible to miss. It's virtually impossible to get to the point that you're supposed to go to, the first objective point on the map, without finding this town. Like, you would have to intentionally take a wide berth around it. Like, you'd have to take a detour of multiple kilometers to get around that town. So you find it. It's organic. It's like, okay, there it is. Cool. And if you don't stop in there, guess what? When you get to the vault, the destroyed vault that you're supposed to be searching for things, there's no... There is no... That's the word I'm looking for. There's no elevator. The lift is broken. There's no lift, and you have a rope to go down. There's no rope in the starting area. There's no rope in this area. You know where there's a rope? There's a rope back in the town that you walked by. If you didn't buy it while you were there, then you know there's a rope there. If you didn't buy it, if you didn't stop in the town at all, you say to yourself, "Golly, I sure do need a rope. I wonder if I can buy one in that town." And you're going to go there, and that teaches you how to play. You know that you're going to need tools. It teaches you the resources. It teaches you how to explore the wasteland. It teaches you a lot of little things about how the game world exists. Now, again, there's no mechanical tutorial. It doesn't actually tell you how to do combat. I don't even think it tells you how the base stats work, like ever. I don't even think it's in the manual. I don't even know if the manual tells you how base stats work. But the tutorial of setting up the world is core to the game, is core to the initial establishment. And sitting around going, that was a thing? It was a thing, and you know what? You probably didn't realize that. If you played through Fallout 1, you might not have even realized that at first. Yeah, they sell ropes in that town, and that's basically there's a shop in there. And if you go to that lift, it says you need a rope. If you go to the elevator, it says you need a rope. So it's shown, presented to you cleanly, offered to you on a silver platter, and said, "Hey, bet you wish you had a rope, don't you? You know there's a town right over there. You just walked by it. You could probably go ask someone." I just saying. It's that's the tutorial. It's a world tutorial. Then comes Fallout 2. Fallout 2 does a lot better job of mechanical tutorial because there is a trial, like we were talking before with Titanfall and Splatoon, where you have to go through obstacle courses, except that this is going through a Temple of Doom style trial, and it teaches you how to play the game similar to those, but what's important here is that there's an NPC at the end, and you have to talk to them, and they say, "You have to attack me. You have to fight me." And you can convince him not to. You have the option to talk him down and say, "I don't want to fight you. I don't need to solve my problems with violence." And he will rebut and say, "Sometimes you will need to raise your fist. Sometimes you will have to be violence to solve your answers." And you can talk him down again and say, "There's other ways. There are other ways to work through our problems. We can solve things without resorting to crass violence." The game teaches you that you don't need to engage in combat. And it's true. Fallout 2 and Fallout 1, you can beat the entire game without drawing a weapon. It's not easy. It's one of the harder challenge runs that you can do. But with high doctor skills, with high medicine skills, with high science skills, you can actually play a pure pacifist run of Fallout. If you want to do that, by the way, I do recommend getting a good companion to help you with the beasts, to help kill rad scorpions and whatnot, because those will be a problem. Those will still give you some trouble, and you can either play it like I don't want to kill anything intelligent or I don't want to kill anything at all. Both are legitimately possible, and you can get good ending and bad ending on both on those games with just text, with just without drawing a weapon. And they teach you that in the very beginning of the game by talking to this NPC who talks to you and says, "Hey, you don't need to do this." Or you say that to them rather, but that's an option. And the game teaches you that that's an option. And then there's Fallout 3. Okay. Then there's Fallout 3. Look. Look, I know. It's okay. It's a bad tutorial, right? We can all agree that Fallout 3 is a bad tutorial. Like, has enough time gone by that no one's going to call me out for that being a hot take? Like, we can all just accept that Fallout 3 has one of the most wretched tutorials in game design history. Like, you start out literally coming out of the womb. Like, that is the opening scene of Fallout 3 is your birth, which is absurdity. Like, it's ridiculous. No mention of brotherhood? Not right now. That's less about the tutorial stuff than I want. That's yeah. So, Fallout 3, you start as an infant. They teach you how to walk around by your character actually learning how to walk. It's a cute idea, but it doesn't work in world. It doesn't work with the flow of a player who wants to play the game. Like, you can't actually get out of the vault for what, a good 40 minutes maybe? Like, you have a hot minute before you're allowed to leave, and actually do anything in the world. There we go. Water, 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 water. Yes, I drink water out of a bucket. I actually do have a bucket that I drink water out of while I stream. It's not weird. Deal with it. So, yeah, the game teaches you to shoot a gun by your character learning how to shoot a gun by somebody giving them a BB gun and teaching them to shoot rad scorpions. Rad. I will talk about writing about multiplayer tutorials in a moment, Flack. That is actually a very good point and requires a different mindset. But let me finish off my thought process on this. Fallout 3 bad. Okay, that's the end of my thought process on this. We can move on. No. And then, so yes, the entire beginning of Fallout 3 is this extended forced tutorial that is just like having bamboo shoved under your fingernails because you can't do anything you want to do and you're completely locked into it. And compare this with Goodsprings. Compare this with Fallout New Vegas and this town of Goodsprings. Because in Goodsprings, you can leave. If you don't like Goodsprings, you can just motor out of there. If you want to side with the enemies in Goodsprings, they're actually trying to destroy the town, you can, and the game teaches you right away that that's an option. You can be the bad guy and destroy the town. The game establishes real quick that that's an option for you. You can do that if you want. If you want to go into and talk to people, they will teach you all the stuff that you need to know in that town, and in a very organic way, in a way that doesn't feel like a tutorial, in a way that doesn't feel unnatural, in a way that feels like it's just playing the game, like in a way that feels like it's just playing the. That's really honestly that's kind of this is all coming back to that, isn't it? It's playing the game. Make players play your game. And yes, for everybody who wanted feetsies, here you go. You guys are weird. Anyways. Beans. Okay, so where were we? Fallout 4 mostly undoes the work of New Vegas, but I don't want to dwell on that because I have a very good question here about multiplayer games. And multiplayer games are absolutely worth discussing. Multiplayer game tutorials, in a way, have to be segmented from the world because you don't have an overarching narrative. You don't have a real world developing, unraveling. You just have an arena. Whether it's first-person arena or whether it's a MOBA or whatever kind of game it is, if it's an arena, it can be very difficult to shove a player into a multiplayer situation where they don't have the tools. That's why games like Dota and League are always so hostile to new players, because nobody wants to be stuck teaching the game. The best thing I can do is say that if you're making a multiplayer game, if you're making a multiplayer arena game, you should have world design, right? You should have world design, you should have a world concept. You might not have a story, quote-unquote, but you should have an establishment of what the world is. And if you don't, then your artists have nothing to go on, and you should, pity your artists. I feel bad for your artists if you don't have that. Have that, make that, do that, make that thing. Establish what your world is. Establish, something of why people are fighting, why people are going into the arena. Unreal Tournament has, its arena, and it's mostly just told in cutscene and in voiceover. But there is a world that is Unreal where you are playing a sports game in that world. So you're the only artist so far. Should you pity yourself? Absolutely. Yeah. No. Yeah. Don't worry. I'll take care of it for you. But yeah, I mean, honestly, in that case, then you have the opportunity. You have the opportunity to establish those rules and settings of your setting. Those rules and needs of your world design, and then make a tutorial separate from the base game. that doesn't feel, that feels like it's the first level, that it feels like you're building up to the arena. Maybe it's a training montage, you know, of a character, you know, going through and fighting some bots or qualifying. Maybe they're trying to qualify for nationals or whatever. If it's, you know, some sort of sports thing, maybe they're trying to, you know, get through the trials that will let them get into the tournament. Or maybe it's just a genuine RPG quest. If it's a MOBA, I mean, I think Dota has a tutorial mode where you basically play a little single player Diablo-like RPG for 10 minutes that is teaching you everything about the world of Dota and the mechanics of the game, but without actually putting you into a live match against angry humans. Because Dota has a world and it has a lore, and that's a good thing. Because then they can use that. They can use that, and that not only invest the player in the world, and in your game, and in you, because that's also going to happen. It not only invests the player in the world and that they're about to enter, but it also teaches them how to play your game in a way that doesn't feel completely removed from the game, but also in a way that doesn't feel like they're being completely handed kids' gloves and being taught to. Do you see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Like, I think Overwatch has like a bot match they make you do first, where they walk you through a little area. It's been so long since I played that though. But yeah, I think that the rules for making a good tutorial don't change in a multiplayer game, except for the fact that you can't have the player directly go into a match. Hearthstone has a constructed tutorial that teaches you how to play the game in the format of a regular game, but it actually is narrative. It actually is, you know, teaching you like how you with the enemy character talking to you, and with, you know, some of, you know, trainer in your ear explaining to you how the cards work. It's a little bit expositionary, but it works because it's in the same world as the arena, but it's not in the arena. It's in the establishment of the lore, but it's not shoving the it's not. Yeah. But yeah, it's always going to feel a little forced in a multiplayer game. It's always going to feel a little forced because, well, you're playing a multiplayer game, and the multiplayer game is not this. You know, it is not with a tutorial. But you can make it flow. You can make it dovetail into itself. It might not be easy, but it will probably be worth it. You know, does that make sense? I mean, again, look at Portal. Portal is, you know, remember, did I shift? There we go. That looks better. Portal is you know, that sort of introduction area, and then imagine a Portal arena. Imagine a combat arena that is in the Portal universe. Work with me here. Just don't worry about the mechanics of it. Just imagine that the opening couple of levels of Portal, you get the portal gun, and then you go to an area where there's other players. Like that could be the build up into another world, into sending you off into into what the base game is, into what the default game is. Again, if you haven't played Zelda 3, do it. Like, if you haven't played Zelda 3, Link to the Past, do it. Everyone should do that. Like, everybody should do that in general, honestly. It's one of the best games of all time, and to learn from it is to be a good designer. Like, it's one of those games that you need to learn how to handle things. The new Halo does have a portal gun mechanic. It's kind of cool. Huh. I did not know that. I have actually never played a Halo game. I never had an Xbox until Monster Hunter came out for World, and then I bought an Xbox from a friend literally to play Monster Hunter before it came out on PC. I like Monster Hunter. And Monster Hunter, a game which is kind of an arena, and a game where you and a couple other hunters go out into a map and pummel a monster until it falls over, has a tutorial in World where you go out and it teaches you piece by piece. You fall off of a boat and you have to climb around, and you have no weapon. Your weapon fell off. Like, you lost your weapon because you got, you know, shipwrecked. That's reasonable, right? That's perfectly reasonable. Okay. There's a perfectly reasonable narrative reason for me not to have a weapon. Okay. Now I have to go sneak around because I'm unarmed, so I have to sneak around monsters. Well, guess what? They're teaching you how stealth works and how monster aggro works. I think you're thinking of Splitgate? Haven't played it. Don't know that one. So you don't have a weapon. You have to sneak around. Cool. And then you have to, I think you have to like trigger a trap or trigger a distraction, like throw something for them to notice, and that teaches you that mechanic exists. It teaches you that those mechanics are around. And then, but it feels natural because that's what you have to do for the situation that you're in. Now we can be angry at the NPC that is yelling at you during all this, but regardless, it's still making it a part of the world. It's not separating the tutorial from the world. Which older Monster Hunter has failed at, to be fair. Horizon solo player? I mean, I played most of my Monster Hunter experience in solo because, well, I like to fight monsters solo the first time so I understand their tactics better. And then I hop on the online and help people because I play Hunting Horn. Hunting Horn main. Represent Hunting Horns. What was I going to do? There we go. If you're writing an RPG, leave space for a tutorial. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Like, if you're going to start in Medias Res, find a place where the tutorial can fit. I played Prey on the channel recently, and that did a very good job of establishing a tutorial in it by putting you in an area that was safe. Now, it wasn't safe, but you didn't know this. It felt safe to you. Inside Clave, Je suis monté. But Prey puts you into a safe area and puts you into your character's daily routine. And the world building in there is phenomenal. And the opening part of the story is learning the background through this tutorial, except that it doesn't feel like a tutorial because it feels like you're just learning the background of the world and learning the rules of the world. And then when things go south, when things go sideways, then you learn more about how the world is established, and you learn how weapons work, you learn what else you need to do. But the opening segment doesn't feel like a tutorial because it's establishing the world. Does Monster Hunter have a good tutorial? Is it easy for a new player to start? Monster Hunter World is the best Monster Hunter for a new player to start. Monster Hunter World has a good tutorial and teaches you to play the game in a very effective way. I like what Rise does, the newer Monster Hunter Rise. I like what Monster Hunter Rise does, but as a new player, if you want to get into Monster Hunter, play Monster Hunter World, because it's the best cross-section of Monster Hunter. Like, it's the best establishment of what Monster Hunter is as a franchise. It also has the best tutorial, and it has the most availability. It's on the most systems. Like, pretty much anybody can get it. Yeah, Jagras is an easy hunt, but keep in mind there's a tutorial before Jagras. Before you fight the great Jagras, there is a tutorial level. Where the one I was mentioning before, you have to run around without weapons, and you have to run away from an Anjanath. That is the actual tutorial. And then, yeah, you have some easy monsters to start out with. In Splatoon 2, Salmon Run and Turf, where there are no tutorials for it, it's just trial and error. Is Monster Hunter a game where you have to be invested into it once you start playing? Have to be? No. Will be? I think so. I got sucked in back in Monster Hunter 4, and I've loved it ever since. It is a game that has assuming you start with World, it has a fairly easy entrance pattern. Like, the way you enter the game is fairly low bar of entry, but the skill level is through the roof. The skill level is absurdly high. It's not shameful to get to the end game of Monster Hunter and to find a point where you bow out and say, okay, this monster feels a bit too much to me, thank you very much. Because you'll have already completed the game 70 hours before then. Like, I'm talking like end game. There will be stuff that is might be beyond you, and that's okay. Games are allowed to have content that isn't for everybody. But starting out and going through the base game and going through all of high rank, yeah, I think that anybody can play Monster Hunter, and I would love for more people too, because it's a fantastic game. I mean, everybody praises Dark Souls, but 90% of Dark Souls mechanics are lifted from Monster Hunter. Seriously, Dark Souls is mostly just the goth Monster Hunter with more enemies. Samurai specifically, you're putting a team of people around your same experience. Yeah, that's talking about MMR. Yeah. dealing with MMR is just an entirely different breed that I don't want to get into now, mostly because I don't have a lot of experience in it. I don't have a lot of experience in coding or developing for MMR or ELO-based games. Like, I know the generals, I know, like, the thought process and the logic behind it, but the simple fact is that many of those games require a certain number of people. Like, you have to have a certain level of player base for that to make sense. If you only have a small group of people playing, like an indie game studio, yeah, that you can't match new players with new players because you might only have 50 total concurrent players in the first few days of launch, which is, not enough to effectively matchmake. So, MMR stuff for an indie studio, I just don't have an answer for you. Sorry. What's that dragon that is heck for melee hunters? Blows you away? The abomination broke you. You didn't prepare. One thing that I will say that Monster Hunter World does not teach you, because you very rarely need to learn it in Monster Hunter, is how to prepare for a hunt. Because that monster's fine if you prepare for it. The older Monster Hunters did a very good job of teaching you to prepare. You couldn't change weapons or gear or even reload your equipment halfway through a hunt. You had to completely leave the hunt and start over. Whereas World says, "Oh, you forgot to eat? Go up to the camp and have a snack. That's fine. Kip off for a bit. Just get a quick bite. No worries about it. Just grab a kebab and keep moving." And as a result, people don't think about preparing for the hunt as a separate stage of the world, which it was in the older Monster Hunters. Preparing for the hunt was a part of the hunt. It was what gear, what weapons, what tools do I need for the hunt. So, Kushala Daora, which is that one, the wind dragon, Kushala Daora is fine if you have wind resist socketed. It's fine if you're a hunting horn user and you have Mind's Eye, or if you have a Mind's Eye gem on your weapon. If you prepare for the hunt, it's not bad. If you try to bulldoze into the hunt using the same tools you've been using for the past 3 hunts, yeah, you're gonna get annihilated. These just gonna toss you around and just throw you out the window. Snack? Yeah, eating before the hunts for to give you stat bonuses. But if you prepare for Kushala Daora, it's not that hard of a fight, even for melee, even for any melee user. I did that fight on hunting horn primarily, and guess what? I socketed for wind resist, and I have Mind's Eye on my horn. Off topic, but I could watch your avatar pace around the lake all day. Aw, well, thank you, because that's what we're doing for. I appreciate that because that's what's happening. You can do that? Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing, that's one of the few points where Monster Hunter World does not teach the player as well as the older ones. In the older ones, you have to learn how to prepare for the hunt. Preparing for the hunt is half the hunt in the older ones. And they don't teach you as well about the preparation process in World. They focus more on the actual mechanics of play, which I get. It's fine, but yeah, you do run into some situations where people might not have all the tools they need for that, which I feel like they could have sidestepped by leading the player directly into the cook and saying, "Hey, have a meal," and then and then show the player that what the stat buffs they're getting are from the first meal, or saying, "Hey." I guess Anjanath does that. I guess Anjanath is a monster that is resistant to the kind of weapons you would have at the time that you fight it, and you're better off going out and specifically building weapons to fight it. That's usually the first hurdle for a lot of new players. They face Anjanath and go, "Oh my goodness, I'm getting annihilated. How do I beat this?" And the answer, of course, is get good, but just get good. Actually, let me tell you a quick story about Get Good. First of all, Get Good does not come from Dark Souls. Get Good comes from Monster Hunter. Just let's establish that first and foremost. Get Good is actually not a Dark Souls phrase. It's a Monster Hunter phrase. It's just another one of the long list of things that Dark Souls stole from Monster Hunter. But Get Good originally didn't mean the crass just get good so that it means now. People would ask how to fight a monster, but they wouldn't want the actual answer, because the actual answer for fighting a monster in Monster Hunter almost always is fight it more, learn its patterns, learn its personality, learn its reads and its tells. Like if some monsters like to go for a certain attacks before other attacks, or sometimes they'll roar and then do a fireball, or that sometimes they will, make certain patterns that you can learn and process. And get good, and people would say these things, and then people wanted an easy answer. They wanted a magic bullet. People wanted somebody to say, "Oh yeah, use Gunlance and it'll fall over," or "Oh yeah, just do this and you strafe left and you'll be able to defeat it." Like they were looking for a gimmick, and people would explain, "Well, no, that you don't use a gimmick. What you do is," and then they would explain how you fight the monster and how you have to learn it, and maybe give a few specific tips on that monster. But the general idea is keep at it and learn the monster's tells and reads. And that gets annoying to say, on every single forum post from some scrub who comes in off the internet and says, "How do I beat this? How do I beat Diablos?" It just gets tiresome. So, got short. Get good means keep at it until you're better. It doesn't mean just become better at the game. It actually originally meant keep at it until you get better at the game. Keep working at it, and you will improve. You will learn it. Just keep at it. Just get good. Just get out there and get more experience. And then it became toxic over time, as you do. It became toxic over time as people just accepted that as, "Oh yeah, just get good, huh? And then by the time it hit Dark Souls, it was just a completely toxic phrase of people saying, "Oh, just get good, scum." Like it was just a way of telling people off. There's actually an NPC in Monster Hunter Cross. I think it's in Cross. That's the one with Bruna. Yeah, that's Cross. The NPC actually says that some people will tell you to get good. What's up with those people? Who even listens to those people anyways? Like that's actually canon in one of the NPCs that says that. I love it. In Sakura, Vice and Ruin, there are some good tutorials and some bad tutorials. That's a game that's been on my radar. I have never played it, but yeah, that's something that I should figure out. I should play at some point. Let's see, what are the tutorials that I want to mention? The big ones I wanted to mention I did already, which is which was Zelda, Portal. There's the classic. My shoulder. I wonder how does this actually look on camera? You know what? That looks exactly like what I'm doing in real life. I'm just stretching out my shoulder. Aside from a little bit clipping. There we go. You have to follow the Goblin Hunter mentality. Dedicate your weapons, armor, and combat style to counter the monster. Until you get your butt kicked, and by the next one, you'll have to relearn everything. Yeah, that's fair. That's completely accurate. Yeah. I didn't watch Goblin Hunter because I felt from what I heard about it, it was a little bit more brutal than I was going to enjoy. But that's not to say it's bad. It just wasn't for me. Okay. Are there any genres that we need to really cover down for this? Because we kind of covered RPG genres and shooter genres and a couple of different I touched on multiplayer, but I don't have a lot of advice on that, honestly. I haven't had the opportunity, I guess is the best way of phrasing it. Are there any specific Pokemon? I'm going to be doing a Pokemon Nuzlocke run starting next week, by the way. So yeah, let's talk. I will be talking about that in that stream to excess. I will bore you with the game design of Pokemon. If you want to fall asleep, put on that stream. It'll be great. If a mod would take care of that, I would appreciate it. Connor, you got that? Okay, so in Pokemon, the game world is focused on teaching you how to play the basic entrances. Connor, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You're fantastic, and I love you. Excellent. All right. Honestly, I'm kind of proud. That's one of the first bot raids I've gotten. You know what? I'm big enough to be recognized and attacked by bots. That's kind of meaningful, actually. They care about me. Okay. Where's my... there we go. No, Connor, you're phenomenal. Everything you do is a delight. Okay. So Pokemon is an interesting bag because it teaches you how to play the root game. It teaches you how to play the game casually, and assumes that if you're going to play competitively that you're going to do the research on your own, which I actually find fascinating. Connor never, wait, what? No, Pokemon never actually teaches you how to, the specifics of some of the world. Pokemon actually doesn't teach you about IVs or EVs or about stat progressions, because that's not important to you playing the game. That's not important to the base experience of Pokemon. That is all extra stuff that you get to when you feel like it, if you want to research it. The base game is status effects do this, and you attack Pokemon and get type bonuses. Oh, my mic's peaking when I... Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not sorry. I'm going to laugh. But I should adjust my levels better. And that is on me. Hold on. Yep, that's too high. I should be here. Yeah, that's not going to peak now. Okay, that's better. Hi, I'm back. Okay, I don't know if that worked, but we'll find out. We'll find out next time I giggle. And let's be honest, if you've been here, you know that's not going to take too long. So the yips are too powerful. True. Yep. No, there's a cake coming up. Gosh. So, Pokemon. The sound of it makes us well, you know what? If my audio flubs are entertaining, then I guess that's all I could ask for. What more could I hope for, right? Okay. So Pokemon teaches you and it holds your hand in the very beginning of the game, but then it does something that I like. Almost all the Pokemon games have some sort of Pokemon school or Pokemon Academy or Pokemon summer camp, whatever, where they give you a school setting and let you see the kids who are learning how Pokemon works. And you can listen to the teachers and talk to the kids, and you don't have to. And they will say, oh, poison status effects hurts you while you're not in combat. Or then they'll say, golly, did you know that a sleeping Pokemon is easier to catch? They'll give you all the extra tools you need, or the extra tools that you might want, but you don't need. The actual things you need are just handled very effectively. Sword and Shield's tutorial is phenomenal, because the opening battle kind of is a bit shoehorned. There's kind of only one way you can go about it, but it's extremely representative of the game, and narratively it is just the beginning of the game. Like, it is, completely just, here you are now a Pokemon trainer, start playing the game, here's your first Pokemon, now fight. Oh, that's what I wanted to talk about. That's the thing I wanted to talk about earlier, now fight. Okay. I remembered it. We'll come back to Pokemon, probably. If I remember to come back to Pokemon, we will. Okay. So. Seiken Densetsu 1. Secret of Mana 1. No, not Seiken Densetsu. Saga. No, wait. Heck. What is that? No, it was Secret of Mana 1. It was Secret of Mana 1. Seiken Densetsu, released in North America and Europe, I think. I want to say that the PAL version was also. Were Final Fantasy Adventure. Yeah, Final Fantasy Legend is Saga. Final Fantasy Adventure is Seiken Densetsu. Final Fantasy Adventure. Great game. Fantastic game. So, Final Fantasy Adventure opens up with my favorite tutorial of all time. Because it's for the Game Boy, not Color, not Advanced, not DS, no. It's for the Game Boy. The old brick-sized one that doesn't break. It's the video game equivalent of a Nokia phone. It's just invincible and immortal. I'll answer about your RPG thing in a few moments. And the opening scene is you start the game, you put in your name, and you hit the A button. And then the game says, now fight, and puts you in an arena with a giant cat monster. and you sink or swim, go for it. It's very similar to Dark Souls, but in that sense, it doesn't teach you anything, and you're expected to say, oh beans, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And you start playing the game because of that panic moment. But the thing is, because it's a Game Boy, it only has a couple of buttons, and because you've probably played Zelda or you've probably played some other game before, Hive Light or something, that has that teaches you the basic controls, or maybe you're just mashing the buttons because and you learn how to move. You learn that D-pad moves. You learn that the A button attacks, and that's all you need. The boss isn't that hard, but it's intimidating because it's 3 times your size, maybe more, and you're locked in an arena with it. And then the story starts after that. The story starts after that by saying you're a gladiator in this arena, and instead of opening with the exposition, they open with that battle. And that battle is a very powerful moment of panic. It induces this feeling of, oh gosh, oh heck, I need to figure out what to do real quick. But it's not as threatening as it appears. It appears more threatening than it is. Again, like Dark Souls, except that Dark Souls is a bit more savage, gotta admit. But yeah, the opening of it is, just straight up, okay, fight, go in there, you have to deal with this battle now. And that moment of panic actually is good, because if the player wants to play your game, and again, the player wants to play your game, they're going to figure out how the controls work very rapidly as they button mash and as they panic and as they try and figure out how to deal with this surprise boss that they didn't expect, that they didn't think they were going to have to deal with, that they weren't prepared for. And the game prepares you for that by not preparing you for it. It does have a tutorial, because that is a tutorial, but it prepares you for the tutorial by just thrusting you in the middle of it and saying, go, do it, do a thing, I trust you, you got this. And then if you lose that fight, a medic heals you. And you just continue as normal. It's not actually any setback, it's actually perfectly fine. So there's not a lot of options that you have there. Like, you have this initial setup. Like, there's so many ways you can do a tutorial, but I like that in medias res, throwing you into it and just saying go, because I don't know if that would work in a modern setting. Maybe on a Switch, or maybe on like a PlayStation. What is? Oh, right. Maybe on a PlayStation, you can get away with something like that, because I don't think it would work as well on PC, is what I'm getting at. But yeah, I like that tutorial. I like that introduction. Put a link to Bug Fables in Discord. I would like to see it. I'm not an RPG guy excluding Pokemon, but I want to beat someday. Which one should you start with? Do you want I assume you're talking about JRPG. If you're talking about any RPG, go play Fallout New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas is a fantastic game. I highly recommend it. If you're talking JRPG, I really want to say Final Fantasy VI, because it is just one of the best games of all time, and I absolutely adore it. But I don't know if that's really the best one the best first one. I don't know. What would be the best JRPG to start with? I mean, honestly, Pokemon is the best JRPG to start with. I think we can all agree on that. Pokemon is the best JRPG to start with, just because that is a JRPG that starts off and teaches you. And I know you say excluding Pokemon, but I think it's completely fair to include that, honestly. But yeah, if you want to play a more serious JRPG, Final Fantasy VI, phenomenal game. Best. If you're looking for a ROM, then it's Final Fantasy 3 on the Super Nintendo, because of the naming conventions that we're not going to get into here. Although I do plan on having a Final Fantasy retrospective streams in the near future. Yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles, I don't know. It's a good game, but I don't know if I would recommend that to someone who's starting out. The tutorials in Xenoblade Chronicles are wretched. The tutorials in Xenoblade Chronicles do not work. Metroid Tutorials. I don't want to get too much into Metroid Tutorials, because my Metroid Dread playthrough is on the channel, and I've mentioned this a few times, but I structure my channel in a way that the replays are going to be as entertaining to watch as live. Like, I don't rely on live. I structure myself more like a Let's Play channel than a VTuber, a traditional VTuber. But yeah, I'm just actually going to tip my hat and say go watch the first Metroid Dread video. I talk about the tutorialization in that heavily, and in short, I love it. I think Metroid Dread is phenomenal. Let me pause real quick here to say, mash the like button, hit subscribe, push all those happy buttons. If you're not a part of the Game Jam, the Go Game Jam, consider joining that. You can. There's a join a team button in the Discord, so you can find someone and you can work with them and work with whatever parts you excel at or you want to excel at, and you can learn along the way. There's also donation pages up there for the Go Game Jam, and there's donation pages here for me. So yeah, that's the option. My personal first JRPG was Dragon Quest Sentinels. I think mine was probably Dragon Quest 1 for the NES. You like games with the tutorials are not noticeable. They blend into the rest of the game. I mean, that's kind of what we spent like the last hour, hour and a half, just talking about. Gosh, it's been an hour and a half. Yeah, we'll wrap up here in a few minutes. With an RPG, a tutorial shouldn't bring you out of the experience, and that's difficult because RPGs kind of inherently bring you out of the experience, right? Like, RPGs kind of inherently take you out of the experience just by existing. Leaving the world to go into a battle is an abstraction. That is an artificiality. And I don't think it's really a hot take to say that RPG tutorials pull you out of the experience by their very nature. And that can be a difficult thing to overcome. But because going into a menu is pulling you out of the experience, just naturally, I think it's perfectly acceptable to make an RPG tutorial a little bit more abstract, a little bit more crunchy, if you will, and because you're not going to pull it out of the experience as much as you are in a first-person shooter where flow is more important. In a puzzle, in a Western RPG where walking around and engaging with the world can be the tutorial. I think that in a JRPG, in a turn-based game, I'll have more leniency in what pulls somebody out of the experience. Does that make sense? I feel like that. Because anytime you open a menu, it's an abstraction. And just opening the menu in a RPG is saying, hey, don't worry about it. This world is based on stats and numbers. It's taking you out of the headspace of seeing the characters as real every time you open a menu and every time your character goes from where they are into a combat arena from a random encounter. Like, that's hard to write tutorials for. I know. And Pokemon does it very well. Pokemon teaches the player very effectively. And yeah, play games. This is going to be the dumbest hot take. Play video games. And don't just play games you like. If you want to be a game designer, play games you don't like that are popular. And you know what? Play them to study them. Play games and say, what is this game doing that people love? You don't have to like something to learn from it. You don't have to like something to appreciate it, right? You don't have to personally have something targeted at you in order for it to be enjoyable. So play a game that you don't like and pay attention to the tutorial and say, hey, how does this teach the player how to do things? Play a game you don't like and say, what is the aspects of this that people enjoy? Like, one of the worst mentalities you can have nowadays is the idea that I don't like this, therefore it's bad. Because that's just a horrible mentality. That's a horrible brain think that you can get into. And it's very common, but it's tragic. It's tragic. But, yeah. Play games that you don't necessarily normally pick up. If you find a Steam sale and say, hey, this game's only, $9.99, and I've heard a lot of good things about it, I don't think I would have ever picked it up. But I'm going to pick it up and see what it's like just so I can learn, just so I can be a better game designer myself, and so I can understand what they're doing and analyze it. And you might end up enjoying it, honestly. Maybe my next tutorials don't bring you the experience. Yeah, they're just levels. Exactly. They could do menus like in Dead Space. Yes, but this was a side tangent on a discussion about JRPGs, which you can't. You have too much menu stuff that you need to handle. How do I feel about the early 2000s tutorial habits of starting a character as basically a fully leveled character and losing these skills and perks before the game itself starts as a way of teaching it? Mixed. Like, okay, that is a cool idea because it teaches you the world, it teaches you what you look like fully powered, but it also teaches you more mechanics than you're going to be ready for. If you have all these powers and abilities, that's one thing. Now, if you have all these stats, that's fine. If you are a bucket of stats, like at the beginning of Symphony of the Night, yeah, until before death pulls your weapons away, you are a walking god and everything dies in one hit. But you don't have any extra abilities. There's no extra mental load. You don't have like 30 spells to manage and 600, different action powers. It's the same mechanics as your basic character, just powered up so that to the point of absurdity. This lets you walk around without having much danger. And then once you get those taken away, it's the feeling of, oh no, I'm vulnerable now. Oh no, I need to watch out. And that, I think, is a good way of tutorializing, because the tutorial is part of the narrative, and you losing your powers is part of the narrative. But if you do that with a whole bunch of power upgrades and say, here's your character, what your character looks like at endgame, you have 3,000 abilities that you won't be able to use later. There was a game I played that did this. I can't remember what it was. There was a game that did this, and it bothered me. But yeah, you just don't have the brain space. You just don't have the mental capacity to parse everything that an endgame character can do. You just don't have the ability to parse everything that's going to happen in the future of playing that game at the beginning. And that's true in general, right? Like, yeah, your player is going to get overwhelmed. They're just going to get overwhelmed, put down the game, walk away, because that might be too much for them to handle. And in the early 2000s, we saw both of those. We saw situations where it was great, Symphony of the Night, where the vision of the future with the overpowered character is effective and still representative of what you can do. And we saw situations in that era, which I'm not going to name names on, where what you got at the beginning of the game was good and powerful, and then you lose even down to your ability to dash, and you say, wait a minute, now this game is, either this game sucks because I lost all that stuff, the ability-wise, because again, in Symphony of the Night, you don't lose your abilities, because all of your abilities are just attacking at that point. You don't lose any like magic or healing abilities or stuff like that. But yeah, if you're losing a whole bunch of abilities after you've been taught to use them, that can feel very overly restrictive and pull you out of the experience, because like, well, now I want those stuff. So I think it's fine if managed well. I think it's fine if it's representative, and if it's going to reflect the starting character just in a safer way, and putting them in the same world, in the same situations, but those situations aren't dangerous at that time. I think that's okay. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? That's what I'm thinking. Oh, now I have to play Monster Hunter? True. Monster Hunter's a great game. It's all fun in Garens? Oh, okay. It's putting a lot for you to remember. Yeah, exactly. And welcome back. In summary, make better tutorials. Black, you missed a bunch, but the VOD will be there. Don't worry about it. So I'm just going to answer questions from chat for the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then we'll probably retire over to my Discord, where we're going to watch a few videos, probably about game design. I have some game design videos I want to share. Either that or about cinema studies, which honestly, cinema studies and game design overlap a lot more than you might think. But yeah, no, you missed us talking about, yeah, stuff. Yeah, we're gonna have a community night tonight. It will be a delight. Yeah, we talked. Oh yeah, you missed mostly us talking about the JRPG stuff. If you guys don't have any questions, we can just call it. What is my favorite color? You know... Okay. I hate that question. So, what is your favorite color? This is completely off topic, obviously, but I don't care because it's one of those questions that is similar to like, what is your favorite game or what is your favorite X? How do you compare them? How do you make a value judgment between red and orange and blue and like how do you make a value judgment about that? Like, I hate that question because, like, you know, there's no reason for a favorite to exist, right? Like, it just is a silly thing. Thank you so much for the advice. It means a lot. Aw, well, thank you very much. It's good to have you. What are some examples of good and bad tutorials that you recommend people to study? That's a good question. That's a very good question. For a good tutorial to study, again, Zelda 3 and Pokemon. Zelda 3 and Pokemon are both excellent tutorials. And Mario 1-1, if you consider yourself a game dev and you haven't watched a video on why Mario 1-1 is a good tutorial, go do that. Like, there's 1,000 videos, like there's 10,000 videos on YouTube about why it is, and half of them might actually be good. But yeah. Holy moly, that avatar. Hi. As far as bad tutorials to study, I want to say Blood Dragon, but Blood Dragon has taken the piss, so it's not actually, like, you know, a bad... It's a bad tutorial because it's trying to be a bad tutorial for comedy effect, but I still think it's interesting to do. One example of a bad tutorial that I would recommend looking at is Civ. Civilization has bad tutorials. Oh, that's another one. I do want to bring up the good tutorials in XCOM. XCOM has very good tutorials, but Civilization has bad tutorials because it just can't explain everything. You are expected to learn so many things at the very beginning of the game that there's too much information. If you haven't already played a Civ game, starting out Civ 5, specifically Civ 5, is borderline impenetrable. Like, you can't get into it. Like, there's so many systems that you need to learn before you can finish your first turn that it's almost impossible to grep. It's almost impossible to actually parse all the information that you need to be able to do your first turn of the game effectively. And by turn 30 or 40, you may have made mistakes that will cascade to the rest of the game. You may lose your first game at turn 40 and not realize it until turn 200, until turn 150. Like, you might not realize that you've lost the game until later. Civ has tutorials. They do, and they're not effective. That's why that's exactly what I'm saying. Is it has tutorials. They just don't work because there's too much that you need to learn that you cannot learn. Like, it's just literally impossible to learn because of it. F-Zero GX has a bad tutorial because of difficulty curves. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Scarlet Nexus was just annoying. I don't remember how they tutorial. You know, how did they tutorial? I don't remember. I think that I've repressed the first couple of levels of Scarlet Nexus. I think I've actually just successfully repressed that game, so that's good. I got that going for me. Oh gosh, if you want to see a descent into madness, my Scarlet Nexus playthrough, I start out trying so much to enjoy the game, but oh my goodness. Oh, okay, onwards. Okay, anyways. Where were we? I have not played Fire Emblem or Fire Emblem, which actually sounds pretty interesting itself. Yeah, I know. I was always scared because of the permadeath side of it, because in the old Fire Emblem games, death was permanent, and that just completely turned me off to it. I was too petrified. Which is weird because I love XCOM. Like, I love XCOM and I don't mind the permadeath in XCOM, but yeah, I never got into Fire Emblem. Oh yes, XCOM. Yes. Sec. So, XCOM tutorial is fantastic. The XCOM 2 and XCOM 1 tutorials are legit fantastic. And the XCOM Chimera Squad tutorial is a fantastic example of learning to play in a controlled environment with, well, you are drip-fed information, and that information comes up and builds on itself. XCOM 1's tutorial is a masterclass in design because it kind of forces you into a certain thing, but it teaches you how the game works. It teaches you how to understand and appreciate the game, and then as a part of the tutorial, people die. Characters permanently die as a part of the tutorial. No. Mod, please. And that is a danger. There, I modded myself because I didn't see counter post lately. Oh, no, counters, got it. Awesome. XCOM, don't you suffer majority storyline-wise if Soldier 123 dies and Soldier... That's not a problem of tutorial, though. That's not a problem of tutorial specifically. That's a problem yeah, no, that's a problem of sliding slopes, of hitting a difficulty spike that causes a deeper difficulty spikes. It's a positive feedback loop. Not positive in a good sense, but positive in that it keeps increasing. Positive feedback loops is, honestly, that should be an entirely separate game design discussion. That should be an entirely separate discourse itself. But a positive feedback loop is where things build up and the rich get richer and richer and richer and stronger, or conversely, you start to hit a point of failure and the failure keeps cascading until you become absolutely desolate. Those are positive feedback loops in that the feedback increases each time. So yeah, in XCOM it's very possible to lose somebody, which makes the game harder, which makes it more likely for you to lose somebody, which makes the game harder until and that can cascade until the game is unbeatable. That's a positive feedback loop in a negative light. And in the positive light, in something like Civ or in XCOM, if the stronger you get, the easier it is for you to stay strong, the easier it is to become dominant, the easier it is to become even better at the game and crush your enemies. Or Civilization is also a good example of that. A negative feedback loop is where the feedback loop decrements what's going on and keeps things at a flat line. The traditional example of that is Mario Kart. In Mario Kart, the last place gets better tools to help them and get back into the higher places, and the first place gets no tools to help them cement their lead. The player in last place has more ability and more mobility to improve their position than the person in front place has to secure it. That's a negative feedback loop because the feedback loop is blocked and brought back down. So instead it starts to build up and then it gets knocked back down. Yeah. MOBAs have that problem too. MOBAs do a lot of that kind of feedback loop, of positive feedback loops where people can start getting stronger and people can get angry because the game can be decided, but even though it's not going to be won or lost for a while, and then if there's not enough negative feedback loops to keep both teams fairly balanced, that can be a problem. That can be troublesome. There's more of my reasoning for why permadeath might drive someone away from Fire Emblem. That's fair. But not mind something like XCOM, which also makes me think of Wing Commander, oddly enough. Wing Commander is a game where you do have permanent death of storyline characters like you have in Fire Emblem, and that was frustrating. Fortunately, you could save scum in that, which I just did. It happened in one of my alien terror attacks when one of my characters missed a chrysalid. Chrysalids are terrifying. I also have an XCOM Chimera Squad playthrough. Look, I play games. This is what the channel's for. But yeah, no, seriously, if you want to go back and watch any of my old videos, in the first couple of videos of each series, I usually do go into the tutorialization as it's being fed to me. I think that's about examples of tutorials that are handled well on repeat playthroughs. So the best way you can make a tutorial on a repeat playthrough is either to make it so ingrained into the storyline that the player doesn't realize it's a tutorial. People don't think of the first level of Link to the Past or the first the first area, the first area of Link to the Past, or what was the other one I was thinking of? Or Breath of the Wild. People don't think of those first regions as tutorials so much as just the first part of the game. Like, yeah, in Breath of the Wild, people do think, but it's more that those are just the first areas rather than those are the tutorials. So they're handled well on replay playthroughs, or ones that are optional. Remember what I was saying about Pokemon, how they have that academy where you can walk into? You can also do that. That looks a little bit waggly. Oh, yeah, that's actually coming out of the armor bit. Huh, that's weird. I'll worry about that never. Pokemon is another game that has a where you can ignore a chunk of the tutorial and just say, okay, I'm just not going to go over to that school. I'm not going to worry about it. And then, yeah, it works well on repeat playthroughs because you just don't have to care. You just don't have to mind it. Okay. I think that's going to be about it. We're going to head over to my Discord. The link is in the description of the channel. And we're going to watch a couple of videos on game design, then pause and talk about them. So if you want to continue the conversation, we can go there. But make sure you hit the like button first, and subscribe. And if you're watching the VOD of this, comment. And hit all the buttons that make my happiness level rise. Again, for the entire month of this month, all the way up to December 5th, every subscriber means a $1 donation to Team C's. I'm donating $1 for every subscriber to Team C's. And easiest donation of your life, right? Dopamine buttons activate. Yay! I will see all of you around. Thank you all. I had a lot of fun. This was a good stream. I enjoyed this stream. I hope you enjoyed this stream. I don't know if anyone else enjoyed the stream, but I enjoyed it, and that's important, right? That's important to me, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, likewise, I'm going to grab some food, and then we will meet in my Discord in the Stuff channel as we discuss stuff. Cheers, friends, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.